How many remember Karmaloop? Karmaloop was started by Greg Selkoe in his parents' Boston area basement back in 1999. And at their peak, Karmaloop was the largest online streetwear hub on the entire internet. They helped make household names for many of the brands that we've come to love and helped bring streetwear to the world. The story of the roller coaster ride that was the Karmaloop journey is so crazy, I'm surprised no one has made a video about it already. Hell, I'm surprised no one has made a movie. And yeah, I know Karmaloop is not actually a streetwear brand itself, but they were just as important as any of the brands that we cover on this channel. And the story of their success and subsequent failure should be examined a little bit more. But with that being said, with no further ado, this is the rise and fall of Karmaloop. Well, maybe a little bit more ado because we got a sponsor this time. And who's that? Us. Are you tired of the bland ambiance at home and want to add more personality? Well, at TakeFlight214.com, we offer custom canvas prints, aluminum artwork, posters, and much more. We've been in business for over 15 years offering high quality wall art, apparel, and promotional materials. Any size, any design, we got you covered. Thousands of designs in stock, and we also offer printable files that you can download directly after ordering. So stop by today and check out our aluminum artwork. It's high gloss, high quality, and extremely durable. So if you want to add more life to your living space and have been looking for the perfect artwork to do so, then stop by TakeFlight214.com today because blank walls are boring. You know the routine, smash that like button because it helps us out a lot in the YouTube search. But with that being said, now let's jump right in. As we said before, Greg Selkoe started Karmaloop back in '99, in the infancy of the internet as far as the general public was concerned. Selkoe's goal was to sell cool clothes online to cool kids who didn't have cool boutiques in their own hometown. At the time, the idea of buying anything online, let alone clothes, was insane. But Selkoe had a plan. He envisioned himself as a rebel force taking on the McFashion stores that populated the malls of the 90s. This was the bleeding edge of the streetwear movement, and as we covered in our History of Streetwear video, before this, fashion was heavily segregated. But a change was brewing in the late 90s and early 2000s, and the Aeropostales, Banana Republics, and Abercrombies were no longer making stuff that kids in the know wanted to wear. Selkoe realized the clothes and brands that Karmaloop featured had stories to tell, so the site posted interviews of designers and brand owners and stories about up-and-coming artists, first with the EDM world and then with hip-hop. Being based in Boston, this meshing of the culture was way more visible, and Karmaloop represented this takeover. It was a cool place to work, and people who were lucky enough to catch a job there felt like they had hit the lottery. Employees could wear whatever they wanted, dogs roamed the office, music played, the company encouraged employees to explore other artistic interests outside of work. For many of Boston's creative youth said, this was the perfect place to work. They were legendary for their wild-ass Wolf of Wall Street style parties too. Though they swore it was all business during work hours, as soon as 5 o'clock hit, the party got started. There were reports of sex and drugs, instances of employees getting so drunk that they had to sleep in their offices under their desk, people smoking the gas, managers offering employees coke. Hell, there might have even low-key been a midget throwing contest that we don't know about. Selkoe swore up and down that this never happened, but I'm sure these are the kind of incidents that you don't want to be public knowledge, you know what I mean? The early days were sweet. They got in the game in the very beginning before any competition could enter in. By the time the competitors got in, Karmaloop was already booming. They revolutionized the way street fashion was sold. I mean, I'm from Texas, and I remember when I was a kid, before sites like Karmaloop, our friends that had family in New York and LA would always clown us about how slow we were to get new stuff. At the time, if you didn't have a connect in any of the fashion hubs, then you really didn't have a way of getting your hands on any of the newest and hottest stuff. Sites like Karmaloop would change this. Now, all you had to do was order it and it showed up at your door in a few days. I think we kind of take it for granted how convenient this is these days. But Karmaloop was nicely positioned to take full advantage of the new industry, and in the beginning, they made a killing. They began to expand and took on outside investments to help fund things. and with this, were able to open up other related sites like Casbah and Plunder. Casbah was like Karmaloop, only it revolved around less established, more up-and-coming brands. In these days, if your brand was chosen to be sold on Casbah, then you were hyped. And if it did well enough to be called up to the big leagues of Karmaloop, then you felt you had made it. From the outside looking in, things looked like they couldn't be going better. But on the inside, things were starting to rot and decay. Karmaloop first entered the black in 2007 and reached its peak in 2013 when it took in $127 million in sales. Over the course of his run as CEO, Selkoe said Karmaloop did around $1 billion in business while overtaking competitors like Digital Gravel to be the top streetwear site of males aged 18 to 35. They were still making tons of sales, but things were starting to take a downturn business-wise. The brand had been doing great so far, and Selkoe, confident in his success and looking to expand Karmaloop's offerings and influence, sunk big money into several high-profile projects, one of which being the umbrella of related store sites like the aforementioned Casbah, Boston Trading Company, and Miss KL, which was a woman's dedicated version of Karmaloop. Much of the expansion was at the behest of Karmaloop's investors. This was during the e-commerce boom when sites like Glitman were super popular. So Selkoe's lenders, who had taken more and more control over the company as they invested more money, encouraged him to build a quote-unquote youth culture conglomerate of specialty sites. When costs quickly mounted and the returns didn't justify the site's existence, Selkoe and Karmaloop realized they had bit off a bit more than they can chew. Selkoe previously stated that it might not have been so destructive to the business as a whole had they quickly pulled the plug on some of these sites, instead of letting them linger to spare friends and colleagues the pain of losing their jobs, which is noble and understandable, right? The specialty sites weren't completely shut down until 2014, and coupled with 2011's other failure, things got pretty bad. Selkoe wanted to transform Karmaloop into a cultural powerhouse, and his big idea was to start a cable channel. He envisioned Karmaloop TV as his generation's MTV. Funny thing is, he was so cutting edge with his original idea in Karmaloop, but with this idea, he seemed to take a few steps back. It's pretty obvious for us now in 2022 to see the folly of someone in 2011 wanting to start a cable TV station. But Selkoe was no Nostradamus, so he obviously didn't see what was coming down the road. The plan was to feature original productions and movies that related to streetwear culture. Selkoe hired former AMC TV executive Katie McEnroe to get it off the ground, and he also made Pharrell Williams creative director in May 2011. The company would throw $14 million into the project. KLTV launched online in 2008 as a broadband entertainment network, but the end goal was for cable distribution. Despite the millions spent on development, an arrangement with Comcast to carry the channel on the system was never reached. Now, having taken 2 L's from the niche sites and KLTV, Karmaloop was forced to change strategies around its core business to address growing cash flow issues. They had taken on a lot of debt lately, and people in the office were starting to get nervous. It also didn't help that in 2013, investors no longer found e-commerce all that attractive like they did before. Trying to bring in more cash, Karmaloop would hire on companies in 2013 and 2014 to search for new investors. In all, 280 were approached, but none were interested. Panicked, they decided to start offering deep sales on the site to help bring in cash. The site began regularly offering huge discounts up to 40% off, which was great for consumers but bad for brands, many of which started to sense that things were going in the wrong direction. But little did they know, they had no idea of what was to come. Selkoe himself even stated that he really hated doing this, but he had no choice. They had to make their nut to the bank every week, and they needed cash flow of any kind. So by now, they were really just trying to stay afloat and tread water long enough to land more investments. With debt mounting and no savior on the horizon, things started to take a turn and looked even worse in late 2014 and 2015. Now, Karmaloop didn't have cash to cover some of the clothes stock that they ordered, but they always promised that it would square up things later on with the brands. But things had started to get a bit shady. Buyers were forced to lie or duck their longtime clients, who in many cases were their good friends at trade shows. Some employees tried to talk to Selkoe and tell him that his decisions had to change, but according to multiple former employees, he was difficult to get through to back then. The company would eventually implement dropshipping strategies in late 2014, and for many, this was the last straw. Customers placed orders and paid Karmaloop, but it was the brands and vendors who actually shipped the orders. Karmaloop then paid the brands and vendors after the order was shipped out, or at least that's how it was supposed to work. But it didn't take long before Karmaloop couldn't keep up its end of the bargain. Orders were never turning up and refunds were never getting sent. Soon customers began to get upset and bad press began coming out voicing issues with how people weren't getting what they paid for. Customers who wanted their refund were directed to a bankruptcy site where they could register as a creditor. And those not willing to go to court to recoup their $100 soon learned that their money was basically gone. But the money owed to Karmaloop's customers paled in comparison to the money that it owed to brands and vendors. One of Selkoe's most vocal detractors said he has failed to pay small business owners and affiliates on time despite countless promises to do so, and claims that over 5,000 brands are owed money. All totaled, Karmaloop was on the hook for over $19 million to various brands and vendors, according to his bankruptcy filing. Most prominent among the brands owed thousands of dollars were 10 Deep at $313,000, Michelin S at $191,000, and Vans at $126,000. As Karmaloop's financial struggles worsened, so did the tensions around the office. What used to be one of the coolest, most laid-back places for young people to work in Boston wasn't the same. Morale was now at a low as layoffs started, and those who remained were asked to do more work for the same pay. Plus, it didn't help matters that there were beginning to be problems with paychecks. Karmaloop used to always make payroll on time, but according to multiple former employees, on several occasions payroll was dropped from direct deposit, and they were told that it was a quote-unquote glitch in the system. Selkoe by now was in full-on desperation mode. Kanye West and Damon Dash at one point expressed a serious consideration to buy the company. Dash even hinted on Instagram that the deal was imminent. Numerous outlets even reported that it was done, but ultimately, it would fall through. The story is, according to Selkoe, his lenders and the bank weren't satisfied with the deal that he, Dash, and West came up with. Selkoe was between a rock and a hard place, and they were both closing in on him fast. After progressively losing more and more control of his company to outside investors, and now his relationships were growing strained with them. On May 21st of 2015, the other shoe would finally drop. Comvest Capital of West Palm Beach, Florida, and Chicago-based CapEx Partners announced that they had purchased Karmaloop for the minimum bid at auction of $13 million. They were the only bidders. Nearly a month after sale, Selkoe sent a resignation letter to his Karmaloop family. In it, he apologized to his former employees, stating, quote, "I'm sorry if I failed you, but in the end, I hope you know that I tried as hard as I could," end quote. He signed it, Greg Selkoe, founder, human, individual. Karmaloop is obviously still around today. The new CEO, Seth Harbour, who is the former co-owner and director of Agenda Trade Shows, believes that Karmaloop has a lot of relationships to repair. First with the brands and then with customers. As far as Greg Selkoe goes, though, it's easy to say he's a scumbag that ripped people off and screwed over his employees, but really, it's not that cut and dry. Did Selkoe make some bad decisions? Yes. Yes, he did. But he was put in terrible positions where sometimes there really was no good option to take. He had absolutely no experience whatsoever in the business world, but he found himself at the forefront of a $100 million company. And yeah, he made some wrong turns, but he seemed to always have people's best interests at mind, despite the reports of a few disgruntled employees, is still kind of conflicted. There were stories of him letting employees crash at his house if they needed it, and he broke his back to see that smaller brands got looked out for as much as possible, even when things started to crumble. Not to mention, the brand he started helped tons of people break into the streetwear industry. He helped launch brands to the next level, and in my opinion, contributed to the heights of where streetwear is today. At the end of the day, we're all human, and sometimes we make bad mistakes, but no matter how dark it gets, and I'm sure at times it was pitch black in Selkoe's view, but there's always light on the other side. Greg Selkoe may no longer be a part of Karmaloop, but he stated that he's going to spend more time working on his nonprofit, the Future Boston Alliance, which mentors entrepreneurs from less privileged backgrounds. He seems to still be upbeat and vows to bring more creative ideas to the world. But what do you think? Do you remember Karmaloop? Were you a customer back in the day? Hit us up in the comment section and let us know. Also, if you made it this far, then we assume that you liked the video, and if so, hit that like button. Liking the video helps us out a lot in the YouTube algorithm so that we can get our videos suggested more to other people and continue to grow our audience. Also, if you want to be updated every time we drop a new episode of a rise and fall of a streetwear brand, then hit the subscription button and the notification bell to be reminded every time a new video drops. But with that being said, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com signing out until next time. Peace.